Oops. Squeaky floor. What's up, universe? It's 4:38 p.m. on, Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. I've been crying. I sent Reese a text. There's a couple things I wanted to mention real quick. Now, if I can recall them, right? You ever have that where it's just like, oh yeah, right here. And then you get into the moment again and you're like, okay. I remember what it is now. Two things. One, I totally woke up crying. I woke up crying and it was around Reese. So I started the day off with that. And then I just want to mention too something that I just found curious. Synchronicities, right? So before I moved into this property, and I was one of the nights when I was sleeping in my car in the driveway of this property, I was processing stuff, and I was feeling into like this vision of myself. And for a long time, like since I came back from Fiji in 2019 and I started releasing weight and I just started really being very intentional about rebuilding myself, like in a lot of ways, like basically from the ground up, like being like literally being reborn. I would use the metaphor. I was like, I just feel like a little kid that's learning how to walk, but in like with intention, you know, with this wisdom that I had gained, or these experiences that I had gained, and just being intentional about like restructuring myself, like fundamentally, you know, and across the board, you know. I say all of that because there is a word that kept coming up, and the word was executive. And basically what the feeling I was coming through with that was like of my life, like of myself. And so one of the nights, as I was just saying, when I was out in front of the property here, I was feeling into where I'm at right now. And it was real interesting meeting the CEO of Sweet Hawk, right? Where he's like, titles don't mean anything. And how in a previous post I had said I agree with that, and at the same time people with titles are also the ones that kind of set the stage and, you know, the scope of things. That people have roles, man, title, you know, for specific jobs and things to they're being that person to get those things done. And I say that because some of the synchronicities were like, you know, some of the people that have been looking at my profile on LinkedIn have been C-suite people. I've worked with those level of people, and I can feel myself being like at that level, you know. And so it was interesting. Like there's some other synchronicities that like speak to that, and it's not from I only mention it not from a place of ego, although if I'm going to be completely transparent, I can feel some of that ego in my body. That's totally a programmed response around titles, right? And the interesting thing today from the same friend that I met was that she's like, have you heard of a CVO? And I'm like, no. And she's like, a chief visionary officer? And I'm like, no. She's like, that's like what you're doing, you know. Because I was telling her about the whole stuff with like Zendesk and the 3 different, you know, pieces of the puzzle and all of this kind of thing, and she's like, you're asking all the people there and they don't have, and I like the answer. She's like, it's because you're asking a question and seeing it from a perspective that is unique based upon the experiences that you've had. And she's like, it's you know, visionary. And it's interesting because, I mean, that word has come up for me too. And I've used it specifically, actually for years now, what it's like to have vision in some ways. But I think that plays into my potential addiction, you know what I mean? Where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, like I can see that vision, I can feel it, I can like, it's tangible to me. And yet there's so many things that need to happen to manifest that vision. And that's where I have definitely really eaten it, you know, like energetically, and really put my heart into something and fell in love with an idea rather than a reality, you know. And that's where the book Awareness by Anthony DeMello, like that was groundbreaking for me, where I'm like, oh shit, I was like, this is this hits, man. Yeah, it's a really good book. If you haven't read that one, it's a recommendation from me. So I just put that out there because there's something about, like, you know, let me wrap this, you know, into Reese too. Like when, like in February, you know, maybe March, Reese had sent me this job post on LinkedIn, and it was like, it's just an interesting thing about attracting resources, and that's how I like to relate to, you know, funds and money. You know, like the words are important, right? You know, in my opinion. And so what is the relationship, how I call things, and is important. So it was just interesting to receive that from her, and to just have these things come up. And I used words and phrases like, when I was with Reese, I was like, we've been called to like manage a large energetic real estate, you know. And so I'm like on this property, and I'm like, was that for me or for us? Or, I mean, obviously it's for me in a way, because I'm the one here. You know, that just goes into another thing, right? Where I'm like using language, and like I'm calling things in, apparently. And then that goes into another thing about, you know, am I manifesting for myself? You know, do I really have a shared vision with a partner, was the question that came up. Or do I just have this dream? You know, like, is it really considering somebody else in that dream? Like, so how am I really manifesting? What am I really attracting? Because Reese, obviously, she doesn't live here in state, and I was thinking about it earlier. Like, I like the idea of sharing my life with somebody and my experience with somebody, and at the same time, like, I super love my alone time. I love my own space. I actually need my own space. And so it's like this binary thing, like where it's kind of like, okay, I have this desire, and yet I also have this like real like strong like need or like other desire. And so it's like balancing these things. There's internal paradoxes, and I'm not sure how to reconcile some of this. And so it's interesting to have those reflections as I'm processing, you know, these feelings and emotions that have been coming up. So this is all kind of a random hodgepodge of things that I'm kind of putting out here right now, but I just wanted to get all of that. So I am going to wrap this up, upload these to YouTube, have this call, and, you know, continue the day. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for seriously being a part of this and journeying with me, and to give me space, honestly. So thank you very much. I love you. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.